What if the quietest seasons of your life, the ones filled with uncertainty, loneliness, and waiting, were actually the moments God was building your greatest strength? What if everything you feared was a setback was, in fact, the preparation for a future so powerful it could only be shaped in silence? Imagine realizing that God's plan for you isn't delayed, forgotten, or abandoned. It's unfolding perfectly, even when you can't yet see it. Welcome to a revelation few recognize. The times when you feel most isolated are often the seasons when heaven is working most fiercely on your behalf. Trust the process. Trust the silence. Trust the plan. Stop worrying, trust. God's Plan, Your Peace Begins Here by Billy Graham. YouTube people often misunderstand what it means to be alone. They confuse solitude with suffering. They assume that if nobody is standing next to you, something must be wrong with you. But the truth is, some of the most powerful seasons in your life will be the ones where you walk alone. Not because you're broken, not because you've forgotten, but because God is pulling you apart, separating you for something greater. And to prepare you for what's ahead, He sometimes has to strip away what's around. Being alone isn't a punishment, it's a process. You see, the world teaches us that being surrounded by people is a sign of success, that the more attention you have, the more followers you get, the louder the applause, the more valuable you must be. But heaven doesn't operate that way. In fact, some of your greatest breakthroughs won't come when everyone is cheering your name. They'll come when nobody knows your name but God. Think about it. Before Jesus stepped into His calling, He went into the wilderness alone. Before David wore a crown, he was tending sheep in fields no one ever saw alone. Before Joseph ruled Egypt, he was sitting in prison alone. And yet, in those hidden places, those quiet moments, something divine was happening. Their character was being built. Their faith was being forged. Their identity wasn't coming from the crowd. It was being refined in the quiet. We often pray for the spotlight, but God says, "No, let me hide you for a while." Because it's in the hiding place that He teaches you how to hear His voice without distraction. It's in the quiet where He removes the noise of opinions, the pressure of performance, and the illusion of needing others to feel complete. He brings you into solitude not to break you, but to build you, to show you that you can stand not on popularity, but on purpose. And when you're alone, you're not truly alone. God is present in that silence. He walks with you when no one else does. He speaks when the world is silent. And when you start to hear Him in those moments, you begin to realize there's nothing more powerful than knowing who you are in the absence of everyone else. You stop needing validation. You stop needing people to clap for you. You stop chasing empty connections just to fill a void, because now you're connected to the One who made you. You see, there's a reason the seed is planted in darkness before it breaks into the light. It has to take root before it can bear fruit. If it comes up too early, it withers. If it's exposed before it's grounded, it falls. And many of us are asking for fruit when we haven't allowed God to take us through the rooting. We're asking for platforms before we've been through the process, but God loves us too much to promote us before we're ready. So don't rush your season of solitude. Don't despise the days when it's just you and your thoughts, you and your faith, you and your fears. That's where the transformation happens. That's where you become strong enough to carry what God is preparing to give you. That's where the healing begins. You don't need 100 hands clapping for you to feel worthy. You just need one whisper from heaven that says, "I'm with you." And let me tell you, when God is with you, it doesn't matter who isn't. When you're in His hands, it doesn't matter who let go of yours. He's not raising you in public for applause. He's building you in private for purpose. He's setting you apart, not because you're less than, but because you're chosen. And if you'll stay faithful in the quiet, in the lonely, in the unseen places, you will come out stronger, wiser, and ready. Some of your most sacred victories will happen when no one is watching, because solitude is not your prison. It's your preparation. You know there's something powerful that happens when the noise dies down, when the calls stop coming, when the text messages stop buzzing, when the people you used to lean on slowly fade into the background. At first, it feels like loss. It feels like silence. It feels like you've been left in a room with nothing but your own voice. And that can be the scariest sound in the world. But that voice, that small, trembling voice within you, is the very one you've been avoiding for years. And maybe, just maybe, this season of being alone isn't about who walked away, but about who you were always meant to become. Because when the world gets quiet, that's when the real conversations begin. Not the ones you have with others, but the ones you finally have with yourself. For too long, we've let other people do the talking. We've lived our lives trying to echo what others expect of us. We've danced to rhythms that weren't ours. We've dressed up in opinions that didn't fit, spoken in tones that didn't sound like truth, and chased dreams that weren't even ours to begin with. But when you're alone, really alone, you begin to hear the difference between what you were told to be and who God created you to be. That voice you've ignored, it's not weak. It's just been buried under layers of doubt, disappointment, and distractions. But the silence is starting to bring it back to life. And slowly, you begin to recognize something. Your voice was never lost. It was just crowded out, covered by the noise of the crowd, the pressure of society and the fear of not being enough. But here you are now, without the noise. And what do you hear? Truth, depth, calling, conviction. That's your voice. This is the season where God teaches you to stop outsourcing your worth, to stop begging people to see you, to understand you, to clap for you. He's pulling you back to the place where your voice matters more than their applause, where your own soul becomes your sanctuary. And when you begin to speak from that place, not to the world, but to yourself, healing begins, change begins, power begins. You've got to start talking to yourself like someone who's going somewhere. You've got to speak over yourself with grace, with authority, and with faith. Stop repeating what others said about you. Stop rehearsing their criticism and carrying their doubts like they were gospel. What did God say? What have you discovered in the quiet moments? That's the voice you follow. 'Cause let me tell you, no one can affirm you. Like the Holy Spirit, no one can confirm you. Like heaven can. When that voice begins to rise within you, something shifts. You begin to walk different. You begin to make decisions from a place of peace, not pressure. You begin to say no to things that used to tempt you, and yes to the calling that once intimidated you. Not because someone told you, but because you heard it in your own soul. You believed it. You received it. And when you find your voice, you stop trying to fit into rooms that were never built for you. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You stop letting insecurity be your identity. Your voice will remind you of what you carry. It will tell you that even if no one claps, you're still chosen. Even if no one stays, you're still worthy. Even if the door closes, God still opens another. Your voice reminds you that you're not, for you're being formed. There's clarity in solitude. There's strength in stillness. And there's revelation in the silence. Don't waste it. Don't rush it. Don't fill it with noise, just to avoid the sound of your soul. This is where confidence grows. This is where courage is born. This is where your future begins. When you start listening to the voice within the one that's always known. The way you just had to get quiet enough to hear it. That voice, that's your breakthrough. When you're left alone with just your thoughts, when the distractions fade, and it's just you and the silence, something remarkable starts to happen. You finally start to hear your own voice. For so long, you've been conditioned to listen to the voices of others, to seek approval, to conform, to fit into molds others have created for you. But in the quiet, in the solitude, a deeper truth begins to emerge. You begin to realize that the voice you've been hearing all along isn't really yours. It's the noise of the world, and the voice you've been ignoring. The one buried beneath all the opinions and expectations is your true voice. This isn't just a matter of talking to yourself. It's a matter of listening. We've spent so much of our lives trying to measure up to what others expect, trying to please everyone around us, trying to prove ourselves worthy in a world that keeps raising the bar. But when you are left alone with yourself, you stop hearing the external demands and start tuning into something much more significant, the voice inside you. The one that reminds you of who you are, not who others want you to be. The voice that echoes God's truth about you, not the lies the world has tried to tell you. In those moments of solitude, you find out that your own voice isn't weak or insignificant. It's the most important voice you'll ever hear, because it's the one that's been with you all along. This is the voice that will lead you to your purpose. This is the voice that knows your potential, even when you can't see it yet. This is the voice that will call you out of the dark seasons into the light. And when you begin to listen, truly listen, you'll hear clarity, you'll hear strength, you'll hear truth, a world full of noise. It's easy to forget the power of a quiet moment. But the truth is, God often speaks the loudest in the silence. It's in the stillness where we are most open to hearing His whispers. And as we listen, we begin to realize that the voice we've been searching for outside of ourselves has been within us all along. It's God's voice. It's your voice, aligned with His purpose for your life. It's the one you've been avoiding because you were too busy trying to please others too, afraid of rejection, too overwhelmed by fear. But when you stop, when you listen, you realize that no one knows you better than you know yourself, and no one can speak to your destiny like the one who created you. So let me ask you, what have you been telling yourself? What have you been listening to for so long? You've been consumed by the noise, the opinions, the expectations, the criticisms, the pressures. But here's the truth. You've been living according to someone else's script. You've been letting others define who you are, what you're capable of, what you're worthy of. But the moment you start listening to your own voice, your own soul, you begin to rewrite your story. You begin to break free from the lies that have held you captive for too long. And here's where the real change happens. When you start listening to your own voice, you begin to speak with authority. You stop seeking approval because you already know who you are. You stop looking to others for validation because you've already been validated by the Creator. You speak life over your own circumstances. You speak truth into the lies you've been fed. You speak courage into your own fears. And when you start speaking with that kind of authority, you no longer wait for someone to hand you the microphone. You grab it yourself. You become the voice that leads your life. It's a powerful thing when you realize that the voice that's been speaking to you, the one you've been avoiding, is the one that holds your destiny. It's the voice of your true self. The world has told you to be something else. But now you can choose. You can choose to listen to your own voice, the one that aligns with God's calling on your life. You can choose to be true to yourself, true to your purpose, true to the path that's been laid before you. So don't be afraid of the silence. Don't be afraid of the moments when it's just you and your thoughts. Embrace them. In those moments, you are closer to your truth than ever before. Your voice is not weak. It's not insignificant. It's the most powerful force in your life because it's the voice that will lead you to your destiny. And when you begin to speak from that place, when you begin to align your words with your purpose, there's nothing that can stand in your way. In the quiet, you'll find the power of your own voice, and that, my friend, is a voice that can change everything. You see, one of the most powerful truths you will ever come to understand in your life is this: people can compliment you, they can appreciate you, but only God can complete you. I know it sounds simple, but when you really grasp it, it changes everything. For so long, we've been conditioned to believe that our worth comes from our relationships, from how people see us, from the titles we wear, and the things we achieve. But the truth is, none of that can fill the empty spaces inside us unless we first know that God is the one who completes us. When you place your sense of fulfillment in the hands of people, in the validation of others, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. People change. people leave. People can fail to see your value. And if your worth is tied to their perception of you, you'll always be chasing approval. But here's the catch. When your identity is rooted in God, when your sense of worth is anchored in His love, then no matter what anyone else does or says, you know that you are enough. Now, I'm not saying relationships aren't important. I'm not saying we don't need community, or that love and connection aren't gifts. But what I am saying is this: before you can fully give yourself to someone else, you must first give yourself to God. You have to let Him fill the places in your heart that nobody else can reach. Because only He knows you fully. Only He knows your true desires, your true fears, your true calling. And when you allow Him to complete you, to make you whole, you become a vessel of love, not seeking validation, but offering it freely. There's a profound peace that comes when you realize that you don't need anyone else to complete you. So many people live in constant fear of being alone, of never finding the right person. But when you're connected to God, you realize that you're never truly alone. He is with you, and His love doesn't depend on your performance, your accomplishments, or your appearance. It's unconditional. And when you allow that love to fill you up, something incredible happens. You stop needing to seek it from others. You stop looking for love in all the wrong places. And you stop seeking relationships to fill the empty spaces in your heart. You become secure in who you are, not because of what others think, but because of who God says you are. You stop settling for less than you deserve. You stop trying to please people who will never truly understand you. And instead, you begin to attract the right people. People who see you not for who they want you to be, but for who you truly are. When God completes you, you no longer have to prove yourself. You no longer have to fight for validation. You no longer have to try to keep up with the world's standards. You are free to walk in the confidence of knowing that you are perfectly loved, perfectly accepted, and perfectly designed for the purpose He has called you to. That's the beauty of God's love. It doesn't just fill the gaps, it makes you whole. It heals the broken places, restores the lost parts of your soul, and empowers you to step into the fullness of who you were created to be. The enemy wants to keep you trapped in a cycle of seeking approval from others, making your worth dependent on external things. He wants you to believe that you need to perform, to impress, to be perfect in order to be loved. But God's truth is the exact opposite. He loves you as you are, right where you are. He doesn't need you to prove yourself. You are enough because He made you. So stop chasing after people who make you feel incomplete. Stop waiting for someone to affirm your worth. The right person will love you. Yes, but their love will be a reflection of the love you already have in God, not the source of it. When you are complete in Him, you don't need to go looking for validation in the wrong places. You become the kind of person who doesn't settle for less than God's best. When God completes you, He doesn't just fill you up for your own sake. He fills you up so that you can pour out His love to others. You become a source of encouragement, peace, and joy to those around you. You stop living in fear, always wondering if you're enough, always doubting your worth. And instead, you start living in the freedom that comes when you know who you are in Christ. You are loved, you are chosen, you are enough. And when you truly realize that the weight of needing anyone else to complete you begins to lift, because you know that you are already whole in Him. And in that wholeness, you will find peace, joy, and purpose. Things that no person, no achievement, and no circumstance can ever take away. You see, one of the most liberating things you can come to understand is that your happiness doesn't have to be tied to someone else. Too many people live their lives with the belief that they need someone else to complete them, to fulfill them, to give them joy. But the truth is, no one else can provide the deep, lasting happiness that comes from within. That's why learning to be happy alone is one of the most powerful gifts you can give yourself. When you start relying on others for your happiness, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. People are unpredictable. Circumstances change. Relationships evolve. And sometimes, people you thought would be there forever walk away. If your happiness is tied to the shifting sands of other people's actions or feelings, you'll never be able to stand firm. But when you learn to find your joy in yourself, in your own relationship with God, in your own understanding of who you are, then no matter what happens around you, you can remain steady. You're not waiting for someone to complete you. You've already been made complete in Him. You're not looking for others to give you a sense of purpose, because you already know your purpose. You're not dependent on external circumstances to determine your joy, because your joy comes from a deeper place, a place that doesn't change with the seasons of life. That's where true freedom lies. My friend, when you know that your happiness doesn't rely on anyone or anything else, you can start living life to the fullest, no longer bound by the fear of losing something or someone. Let's be honest, a lot of us go through life with a deep fear of being alone. It's almost as if society tells us that being alone is a curse, that solitude is something to avoid at all costs. But I want to challenge that notion today. Being alone doesn't mean being lonely. Being alone doesn't mean being abandoned or unloved. Being alone means you have the chance to connect deeply with yourself, with your thoughts, with your desires, and most importantly, with God. When you spend time alone, you get the space to reflect. You get the chance to rediscover who you are without the influence of others. You stop being defined by external labels, external pressures, and external expectations. You can ask yourself the hard questions. Who am I really? What do I truly want out of life? What has God called me to do? And most importantly, what does it look like for me to walk in His purpose for my life, no matter what anyone else thinks? Being alone gives you the time and the space to answer those questions, to wrestle with those thoughts, and to come to a place of understanding. And when you know who you are, when you're comfortable with your own company, that's when you start to experience true peace. It's a peace that doesn't come from the approval of others. It doesn't come from meeting someone else's expectations. It comes from knowing that you are enough just as you are. You don't need someone else to validate your worth, because you are already validated by God. In that solitude, you also find healing. You're able to reflect on past hurts, past mistakes, and past disappointments without the distraction of outside noise. You can process the pain you've been carrying for so long. You can forgive yourself and let go of the things that have held you captive. You can give your heart space to heal, to grow, and to become stronger. You see, God doesn't want you to be dependent on anyone for your happiness. He wants you to find joy in Him and in who He's made you to be. The world will tell you that you need someone else to feel fulfilled, to feel loved, to feel whole. But the truth is, you are already whole. You are already loved. You are already complete in Him. And when you recognize that, when you finally understand that your happiness doesn't rely on the people around you, it sets you free. This doesn't mean you'll never want companionship. It doesn't mean you won't long for deep, meaningful relationships. But it does mean that you won't settle for just anyone to fill the gaps in your life. You'll stop looking for someone to complete you because you know that you are already complete. You'll stop allowing your joy to be determined by someone else's actions or decisions. And when that happens, you become the kind of person who attracts healthy, life-giving relationships. Relationships that are built on mutual respect, mutual love, and mutual growth. So stop waiting for someone else to give you permission to be happy. You don't need anyone's approval. You don't need anyone to tell you that you're enough. You are enough right now as you are. God has already called you His own. He's already given you everything you need to walk in joy and peace. When you learn to be happy alone, you stop depending on others to fill you up. You begin to recognize that the only person you truly need to rely on is God. And when you rest in His love, when you trust in His plan for your life, then nothing, no person, no circumstance, no situation can steal your joy. You found the source, and that source will never run dry. You see, learning to be happy alone doesn't just free you from the fear of solitude. It also opens the door to discovering what you are truly capable of. There's something powerful about standing on your own, facing the world with confidence, and realizing that you have the strength to thrive, not because of someone else's presence in your life, but because of what God has placed inside you. It's in those moments of independence, in those moments of standing tall on your own, that you start to see your true potential, your true worth, and your true purpose. For too long, many of us have measured our worth by what we do for others, by how much we can give, by how much we can prove, by how much we can sacrifice. We've been conditioned to think that our value is determined by how much we can contribute to the lives of others, to relationships, to families, to work. But when you learn to stand on your own, you discover that your worth isn't based on what you do for anyone else. It's based on who you are, on the unique person God created you to be. When you're alone, you are forced to focus on yourself. Not in a selfish, self-centered way, but in a way that says, I need to figure out who I am. I need to understand my own needs, desires, and calling before I can give myself fully to others. Too many people walk through life without ever taking the time to get to know themselves. They're always chasing after the next relationship, the next job, the next thing, without ever pausing to ask the most important question: who am I really? This is where the beauty of being alone lies. When you're by yourself, you get the time and space to reflect on that very question. You get to reconnect with your dreams, your desires, and the things that light you up. You get to rediscover the passions that may have been buried under the weight of responsibilities or the demands of others. You get to explore what brings you joy, what makes you feel alive, and what you want to give to the world. But here's the thing. When you know who you are and what you're capable of, you start to see the world differently. You stop measuring your success by the opinions or approval of others. You stop worrying about whether or not someone is going to accept or reject you. You stop chasing after validation because you've already found it in God. You start to realize that the things that once seemed important, the opinions of others, the approval of friends or family, the desire to fit in, are no longer the things that drive you. You now live for a higher purpose. A purpose that comes from knowing exactly who you are and what God has called you to do. And that's where the true power of being happy alone lies. You realize that your worth and your purpose are not determined by anyone else. They're determined by the Creator. You are uniquely equipped to do exactly what He's called you to do. You are the only one who can walk the path that has been laid out for you. When you understand that, and you start to believe that, you step into a whole new level of confidence. You no longer seek approval from others because you are already approved by God. You no longer wait for someone else to give you permission to pursue your dreams or follow your calling. You stop doubting yourself because you know who you are and you know what you're capable of. And the more you walk in that confidence, the more you begin to see the possibilities that are right in front of you. You start to take risks you might have avoided before. You start to make decisions that align with your purpose, even when they go against the grain of what others expect. You become a person who lives with intention, who moves with purpose, and who follows the path that God has set for them. But it doesn't stop there. As you grow into this new sense of self, you also begin to attract the right people into your life. People who respect you, who see you for who you truly are, and who appreciate the strength and confidence that comes from being comfortable in your own skin. You attract people who build you up, who challenge you to grow, and who support you as you walk out your calling, and you begin to recognize that the right relationships are not about needing someone to fill a void in your life. They're about sharing your life with someone who complements the person God has already made you to be. The journey of being happy alone is not about isolating yourself or turning your back on others. It's about realizing that you are whole, that you are enough, and that your purpose is not dependent on anyone else. It's about stepping into your power, walking with confidence, and knowing that the greatest relationship you can have is the one you cultivate with yourself and with God. So take the time to get to know yourself. Embrace the solitude, discover your worth. And when you do, you will find that the life you were always meant to live is not about seeking approval or validation from others. It's about living fully, living freely, and living with a knowledge that you are exactly who you are meant to be. And in that knowledge, you will find true happiness. The process of growth isn't comfortable, and transformation never happens in the spotlight. True growth happens in hiddenness, in silence, in seasons when the world seems far away, but God feels closer than ever. When you trust in His plan, you understand that closed doors, silent seasons, and unexpected detours aren't punishments. They are divine redirections, setting you up for a purpose greater than your imagination can hold. So stop worrying about the pace, the noise, or the applause. Start trusting that the God who started a good work in you is faithful to complete it, in His time, His way, and for His glory. And when His plan unfolds, you'll realize the wait was never a waste. It was your greatest preparation.